There's no better way than to get rid of low-level emotions than to tax yourself physically. Just think of how present you are when you're trying to lift something heavy. All of that nonsense goes away. And so these are little things that you learn to do to take ownership in your life for the feelings and emotions that you're feeling or not feeling.
What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today because we know time's a valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and that's what this show is all about. Motivating you with stories of struggle, courage, and hope to empower you to make a difference in your life and the lives of others.
Are you interested in having Rick speak at your event or business? Here is what others have to say.
Did not know his story, and it was so inspirational, and his presence on stage, his authenticity was just incredible.
Absolutely loved his performance. It made me feel some type of way.
If you're looking for a speaker for your next event, hire Rick. I promise you this, you will not be disappointed.
Visit rickornelas.com to book him today.
Welcome back, Impact Heroes. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Change social impact hero, and he is a special one. You are in for a treat. Our guest today is obsessed with helping people maximize their God-given and human potential. He's a citizen of the world who has learned that no matter where you go, your presence, energy, and the way you make people feel are the only languages you need to speak. I love that. He's not only in shape physically, but also mentally tough and expresses fitness and mindset with style. He has a relentless commitment to self-mastery in 5 core areas: mentality, physicality, personal and professional style, and relationships, all important. And he can teach you how to get out of your own way to stack wins daily. He's a speaker, coach, and the founder of the Academy of Maximized Potential. Please welcome the authentic, bold, in-your-face, and straight to the point, Nick Connor. Nick, welcome to the iSpark Change podcast. How you doing?
I'm well, man. Thank you for the intro. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. I always want to serve my guests well with their intro because, you know, you've obviously accomplished a lot. And so we want to share that with our audience so they can become aware of who you are, which I think is important.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I'm excited to be here, excited to dig into some stuff that I know is going to serve your audience. Cool.
Well, you know, part of the reason when we connected, part of the reason why I wanted to have you on the show is because, you know, I see you as someone that is impacting others, someone that is having helping to spread positive change in the world because your actions have a positive effect on humanity. You know, anyone that is looking to improve others, to make them better, is someone that is going to positively affect humanity. So that's what I call a social impact hero, you know, by our definition. So it's an acronym, and, you know, we'll get to some of those throughout the conversation. But my first question to you and to every guest is, do you see yourself as a hero?
That's actually been a focus of mine since my daughter, who's now 3, was born. A year leading up to that, I had at the bottom of my calendar those alerts, those tasks that we can put on our calendar to remind us of important things. And mine was best body by 40. So for me, being a hero to my daughter at that time meant just getting into the best mental, physical shape that I could possibly be by the time she arrived. And that was a goal that I didn't accomplish until about 8-9 months into her life, where I was on a trip to Dubai with her and my wife, and I was in this incredible experience. I mean, it was a great trip. Whole family was in this incredible place, and I was really unhappy. I was unhappy with myself. I wasn't present. I was sitting on the balcony one night, kind of going through my thoughts, thinking about this, like, why am I so unhappy? I have my beautiful wife and daughter feet away in the bed. I'm overlooking the beautiful cityscape in Dubai. And at that moment, I realized I was not that person that I wanted to be. that I had reminded myself for an entire 12 months leading up to when my daughter was born. And so in that moment, my idea of being a hero was to be in a completely different place mentally and physically, and I wasn't there. And so I didn't call it being a hero. I saw it as being the best version of myself. And so leaving that trip, I got committed to being a hero to my wife and to my daughter by becoming the hero in my own life. And that's been my focus ever since that trip, is to build the man in every way that I respect and admire, so that I can gift that version of myself to the world. And that starts at home. That starts with my wife. That starts with my daughter. So I love this idea of this question, because I think it's so important for us to see ourselves that way, because we cannot make others feel something that we don't already feel for ourselves. And I think for personal development, people like us, we want to positively impact the world. That's why we're doing what we do. But ultimately, we cannot do that unless we are looking at the person in the mirror that we admire in some way and in every way possible.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that resonates with me about it starts at home, because it was similar with myself to, make some changes and really be the person, best version of myself as you share. And it's interesting. It reminds me of a story from Gandhi that I'll share real quick, because I think it's important to amplify your point. There was a woman that had her son that wouldn't listen. She kept trying to improve. He was a young son. He was like 6 or 7, but he wouldn't listen to her, especially with regards to his eating. He was always eating sweets, and she could never get him to stop eating sweets, and he'd eat them behind her back and sneak things. So she went to see Gandhi. She travels far distance. She waits for 4 hours to see Gandhi, and she goes up to him. She says, sir, I need your help. Can you please tell my son that he respects you? He honors you. Can you please tell my son to stop eating sweets? And he pauses for a second, and he says, I'm going to need you to come back in 2 weeks' time. Come back in 2 weeks' time, go home and come back in 2 weeks' time. So kind of dejected, she leaves. He doesn't tell the boy anything. She leaves, travels all the way home. 2 weeks later, she travels back, waits in line again to see him, many hours, comes back up to him and says, okay, sir, you asked me to come back in 2 weeks. I brought my son back. Can you please tell him to stop eating sweets? And Gandhi, bends down, and he looks the boy in the eye, and he says, you need to stop eating sweets. You need to listen to your mother. She has your best interest at heart. Listen to her, respect her, and do what she tells you from now on. And, the boy says, oh, okay, sir, I will. And then, they're ready to go. And the mom is kind of upset. And she says, why didn't you just tell me that 2 weeks ago? I traveled a long distance, and I waited, and it was hard for us to come. And he looks at her with, kind eyes, and he says, 2 weeks ago, I was still eating sweets. So I had to give them up before I could ask him to give up sweets.
Ooh, wow.
And that's so true story. And it really amplifies at that point of if you want to coach others to be the best version of yourself, and I've been a coach for, almost 8 years. If you want to coach others to be the best version of yourself, then you need to look in the mirror first, right? And you need to see what you're really doing, how you're living your life. And if you're practicing what you preach, so to speak. So I appreciate that you share that, and that you're working on yourself. So share with us, Nick, how obviously, your daughter played a big role. My family is my everything. The reason, I have 3 daughters, and they're the reason for everything that I do. They're all now grown. I loved when they were little like that. That was my favorite time, when they were like 2, 3 years old, the best. But share what got you on the path to, obviously that got you on the path to wanting to, and I believe you are, all of us that work on ourselves to improve ourselves, that has a ripple effect on others and leads off on others. So we are all heroic if we do that. But what really got you to become a person that wants to help others, that wants to, was it something sooner, or all throughout your life? Have you always been on this journey of wanting to, become involved in personal development, or what really was it for you?
It was the Alchemist, the book, The Alchemist, actually. And so I was 27 years old when I got done pursuing the thing that I thought was going to be my life's path, which was professional sports. And I reached the minor league professional level, and that was incredible. But then here I am. And just for the audience, I want you to imagine you wake up every day, you know exactly what it is that you're preparing for. You know what to do when you're not performing. You know where you're going to be in 3 months' time, where you need to be in 6 months and 12 months' time. You have structure provided for you. You have camaraderie, teammates. You have a path. And then one day somebody tells you that you can no longer pursue that path. And so at 27 years old, the path that I had pursued pretty much my entire life was felt like it was ripped from my hands. At the moment I was finally reaching and realizing the dream. And so there I was, 27 years old. My friends had already had a job or two. They were on their way professionally. They'd already found somebody that they were going to marry. They bought a house. They were on their way in their late 20s. And here I was trying to figure it out. And so when I sat down with The Alchemist, I was in a place where I'd bounced around from a few jobs, and I knew that I wanted to feel and experience life like I did as an athlete, motivated, directed, focused, hardworking. But for 3 years, up until that point, sitting there that night with that book, I had felt demotivated. I'd felt what it felt like to not want to go to work, to not want to work hard, and then to not work hard and feel like I'm not working hard. So I was really searching. And The Alchemist spoke to me. It gave me permission ultimately to dream again, to be willing to look into the future and see that the vision that I had, which was to be successful and to live a life that would be full of adventure and fun, but success and, wealth, all the things that I really wanted as an athlete, I could still dream for a future like that. And so coming off of that, I read Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within, and that just sparked my journey on personal development. But here's the interesting thing to answer your question. I always read personal development from the perspective of somebody who wanted to make others feel the way that I was feeling. So I was reading The Alchemist. I was reading Awaken the Giant Within. But I was thinking to myself, I want to inspire others the way that I'm being inspired. Now, unfortunately, this caused some problems, right? Because I needed the personal development. I needed to apply what I was learning, but immediately my mind went to, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to positively impact people in the way that these books, this text is impacting me. And that was really the start of my interest in personal development, those two books.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, because in our journey of being heroes, we all have that origin story, that kind of what was the turning point, what was the catalyst. And two things stood out to me about what you were just sharing, Nick. I want to dive into purpose a little bit, but before that, I want to ask, and I think this is an important question for our audience. There's a million personal development books, right? Self-help, improvement, all that. I mean, it's the biggest space. And you look in the bookstore. I mean, if you still go to a bookstore, and
exactly.
And so, and lots of people read them. Lots of people read books. I mean, I've read hundreds of books, and there's always takeaways, right? How did you share how you were able to translate that into action for yourself, into making changes? Because a lot of people read books and nothing happens, right? They read these read these personal development books or self-help books or what have you, and maybe like, oh, that was kind of good, or they make a change for a week or a month, and then right back to old habits, and then it's done, and then they'll read another one and do the same thing, and that was even me, 15, 20 years ago. So how were you able to translate that into action, success, making sure you change that path?
Well, right out of the gate, I was committed. And that's one thing that once I've made a decision in my life, I've gone after it, and there's not really anything that would stop me. I mean, I live in Estonia, And, because when I met my wife and she told me she was from Estonia, I wasn't concerned about those details. I knew exactly what I was looking for because years earlier I'd made a decision that I was going to get married and I was going to start to prepare for my wife in advance. And then when I found her, all that other stuff fell away. All the details of countries and all of that fell away. So what helped me apply what I learned early on, even though I was so far from an action taker, a committed worker, I had a lot to learn in that category still, but I was decisive. I decided that's what I was going to do. And even though I didn't have all the answers, that level of decisiveness led to, within 4 months, booking my first speaking engagement at a Title I school in Cincinnati, Ohio, having that filmed and recorded to create a demo video, and a website was built because personal development led me to understand youth motivational speaking through another resource that I came across and stumbled upon. And it all just kind of lined up. But because I made the decision, like, I'm going to do this personal development thing, I just kept taking action on that. And one thing led to another. And I think that's what people struggle with. They get too caught up in the details of their preparedness, their worthiness, all of those things, instead of just deciding, okay, I'm going to go down this path and that's it. I'm going to go down the path, start taking steps and just see what happens. And some of that's retrospect, but ultimately I think that decisiveness is core and crucial to implementing anything that we learn.
I'd say thank you for sharing. That's super important for our audience and for everyone, is to have that proverbial line in the sand, so to speak, where you're like, okay, now I made the decision. I'm not going back. This is, burn the boats, whatever cliche you want to use. You're like, I'm just moving forward. And I think you said something there at the end, Nick, that you don't always have to, looking back, you might say, oh, maybe I could have done it a different way, or maybe it would have been faster if I did this way or that way. But that's where all the learning comes in, is in that journey. And that's where, but as long as you know that, hey, I'm moving forward, it's not always going to be that straight linear path, right? You might kind of go off here and go off there, and you come around and end up living on the other side of the world where you may not have ever thought that, at the time, but it's all part of that journey. And that's where all the beauty comes in, and the learning. So I'd say, Nick, that I'm guessing that along that journey, that purpose played a role for you. And the H in hero for us is that, an H honors your purpose. The purpose is what defines you. It's how you show up in the world. It's the foundation of why you do what you do. And so you already touched upon that with, why you wanted to become the best version of yourself for your daughter and everything, and be that person and serve, those that you serve. Do you feel that purpose to do so was something you found through the reading and the journey, or something that you've had to, that has always been there, or how has purpose played a role for you?
Well, I thought for a long time that purpose was going to be something external to me. In what I was mistaking purpose with identity in many ways. I thought that my identity was to be an athlete, or my identity was to be a husband and a father. My identity was to be something really of this world. And what I've grown to realize through my faith and through my commitment to understanding and developing a relationship with God, that, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And so my purpose is really in understanding how to edify my spirit while having this human experience. And so my purpose is now to fulfill myself with the feelings, the emotions, the things that I want to feel for myself, take full responsibility for experiencing that. And that starts for me very practically every single day at 3:58 a.m. between 8 a.m. And that's where I get to edify my spirit, satisfy my human need for recognition and significance and variety and adventure and love and connection, I get to sort through all those needs that if I don't get to edify my spirit. Because when we're so trapped in, let's just say, desire, when we feel like we don't have access to these basic human needs in our relationships, in our job, in our career, all the stuff external to us, it cuts us off from that spiritual side of our life, which is really ultimately where we get to give and contribute the most, when we're tapped in and tuned into that. And so I call it overflow. When we get to a place where we feel a certain way for ourselves, because we're connecting to source, because we are sorting through the emotions that come with being a human, and we rectify some of that to get to, let's say, neutral, we can show up to our life, our responsibilities, from a place of self-transcendence. We can transcend ourselves, which is where presence, vulnerability, true connection is able to happen. It's very difficult to do that, man. Like I struggled for a long time wanting to do that, but I was so empty with fulfilling the basic human needs that I could never tap into that higher level spiritual connection that I needed, that we have access to through my faith and through my belief, which is through God and what Christ did for us and all those things, right? So it's like, that to me ultimately is the game, Rick. It's connect to that deeper spiritual side of ourselves through an intentional daily practice so that you can overflow and positively impact others. And that's my purpose, to bring it full circle. That's what my purpose is each and every day.
Well, you're obviously living in that, you're a living example. You're helping others with that. The E, if you didn't know, is sharing your mission with others and engaging your audience in your mission. And so you're obviously do that, with what you've created with the Academy of Maximized Potential and everything. How do you use the R in Hero is ripples our message to spread, ripples our message to others to spread positive change, because our life stories are what connect us all. I mean, everything is story in our lives, our history, everything, what we do on a daily basis. And they connect us in what I call our beautiful flossomeness. We're all flawed. We're all awesome in our own ways.
Flossomeness. I like that.
Exactly.
That's good, man.
I think it's our duty to share the lessons that we've learned along the way in our service to others. So
No
how do your stories, your life experiences, your, message, or the message of your mess, how do those play a role in your work with others?
Well, it all starts there. I especially at this point, having coached for a long time, with your example with Gandhi is perfect for, it's such a good reminder of how important it is to teach not only what we've learned, but then also be in a constant state of growth so that we can continue to teach from our own personal experience. And so, the thing for me has always been about proving to myself that this thing called potential, this thing called talent, that people always would recognize. And I'm sure people in the audience have heard that for years. And it's like, okay, well, what is it? Like, can you define what it is? What do you see in me? And a lot of people don't feel like they have talent or potential, or they don't know if they're capable of closing that gap between where they're at and where other people recognize they could be. And so what I've found is that the absolute best way to teach and to give, which I do think is our duty, is to constantly be in a state of growth and personal development. And so when I'm coaching my clients, I'm speaking from my stories of that day. I'm sharing stories about my challenges that I'm working to overcome in those moments. And so it's stories to me are always a part of the teaching process. But the denominator I think that is most critical there is that you're in a constant state of growth at the same time. It's otherwise your audience or the people that are looking to you for advice and for direction, at some point they're going to have to move on. because they've gotten enough from you, or you're no longer growing. So there's nothing more for them to benefit from you. And that to me feels like my duty is to not only teach through my stories, but then also to continue to develop and build my story through constantly growing. So, what a great way to live, by the way. What a great philosophy to live by, that if you could really own the fact that you get to teach and serve those around you through your experiences, through your story, while at the same time being committed to constantly growing, so you create new stories. And the one thing that I've lived by, and I really love to share this with my clients, I'll give it to everybody here in the audience, is that, a good goal to hit is to measure your growth, not by your success, but by dealing with new problems frequently. If you're still dealing with the same problem in 3 months that you're currently dealing with, then that's a good indication that you're not growing, that you're not applying what you've learned, that, all these incredible things you're learning here from this podcast that you're listening to. So measure your growth, not by your success, but by the way you're fixing problems in your life. And if you can do that through, I believe, a process of removal. Depending on how old your listeners are, I mean, at this point in our life, Rick, I bet you can attest to this, man. I'm removing stuff that's causing problems, rather than trying to add a whole bunch. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I love your answer in so many ways, Nick. I mean, first that in order to, share those stories and to coach others, that you have to be growing. I kind of hear like that servant leadership, if you will, that you always, and even you talked about your faith is, that's how Jesus led, right? By he was in, constant growth and prayer and was, sharing stories to amplify the message and everything. And then the second part of it is that, well, one thing you said in there is about helping others grow, seeing the things that they can't see in themselves. And I know that's something that I struggled with at times in coaching others, is that, oftentimes, and I'm guilty of it as much as anyone, is that we have blinders to what's going on inside our own reality, our own heads. And it takes that external viewpoint, to see it. And that was me for a long time, until you kind of get those wake up calls, and then you're like, oh, duh. And then it seems so silly, right? It seems so silly. Like, why didn't I see that before? And, oftentimes it's a coach or mentor or someone that can point that out. And, the ability to share the gift or ability to share that with others, to show people that they have a greater potential, that they can be something different, that you see them growing, is something that, for any coaches out there that are listening, it's something that I think is truly special and truly a gift, because that in itself is heroic. That in itself is lifting others up and changing the world, because we'll get to a spark moment here at the end of the interview, but that's a way to change the direction of someone's life for the better, just by like one comment or one action or one thing that you point out. And you really never know how that's going to affect them. Yeah. And then the last part of what you were talking about is that, we all have to be continually growing if we're going to continue to serve, is because, if you stop growing and you're not looking at what, what's going on in your own life, or you're not able to solve that problem, a few months later, then, you have to kind of do that check again and go back and look in the mirror, like you said. Yep. And I think that's super important for everyone to understand, is that, we all get stuck in those ruts, and that's where, to look at the problems and have that be the best indicator of where your growth is and how you're solving the problems. I think that's a brilliant way to look at things, for sure.
Well, it was a confrontational conversation I had to have with a mentor of mine who just flat out called me out. And essentially the breakdown of it, as many of your listeners may be coaches or people like us who want to positively impact others, there's a lot of intention with that. There's good intentions that come with that. And for most people, the appearance of those good intentions are oftentimes enough to sedate them into thinking that they don't need to grow, that they don't need to address the darker corners of their lives. But ultimately, every one of us reach a point where no matter how successful we get, we're going to have to confront and face ourselves. And what I found is that I needed to be confronted by a coach in order to address being satisfied and content with appearing to be someone who was positively impacting others. But in reality, I wasn't willing to go into those dark corners of my life and really get honest with the things that were causing problems, behaviors that were causing problems. And it takes an extraordinary amount of strength and courage to do that in your own life. And it takes an even more amount of courage and strength to ask for help to do that. And so now flip it on the other side. If you're a coach listening to this, if you have not learned how to do that in your own life, there is absolutely no way you're going to be effective in helping others do that. So it is, marriage is a mirror, coaching is a mirror. Our kids are a mirror for us. If you're finding it hard to get clients results, or if you're trying to sell coaching clients or sell books or whatever you might be trying to sell other people on, even if it's just that you're a good dude or a good girl, whatever, good person, it's very hard to make people feel that way if you're not willing to look at the dark corners of your life and address that stuff. It's just a part of the process. And, being an entrepreneur, being a coach, which they go hand in hand unless you're working for somebody else's coaching company, that to me is the most important part of building an influential brand, which is a part of what I've done, the work I've done. It was a book I wrote, all about, okay, how do I develop a personal brand? Well, it starts with you. You are the brand. Your ability to positively impact others is, how are you going to expect other people to listen to if you don't listen to yourself? I mean, let's just get real. How do you expect your kids to listen to you if you don't listen to yourself?
Yeah.
And so, ultimately it all comes back to, oddly, it comes back to us, even though we're here to serve others. But I think it's an extraordinary thing if we can address that, because it forces us to accept our humanity. Ideally, in my belief system, it forces us to look up and recognize something's going on much bigger than us, and to accept and embrace that, pursue that, learn about that, develop a relationship with whatever that is for the whoever might be listening. And so yeah, man, it's all at the end of the day always comes back to us being able to fulfill ourselves first.
Yeah, it reminds me of the quote from Jim Rohn that's where he said, "The day you grow up is the day you learn to take personal responsibility for everything that happens in your life." And
yes.
And I mean, that's exactly what you were talking about, is that, so many individuals, they want to blame the government, or they want to blame the weather, or they want to blame whatever, right? And go throughout their day just, it's always someone else's fault, or something else that happened, or whatever. And that was a big shift for me to do personally, was no, it's always on you. It's always your responsibility. And then when you have people that you lead, family, people that you coach or team or whomever, then you have added responsibility where, yes, then it is always definitely, up to you, and taking that extreme ownership of everything is super important. And
mm-hmm.
I want to thank you, Nick, because, in all your answers, you've, without knowing it, you fulfilled the O of being a hero by opening your heart to the world, being authentic, being vulnerable, allowing others to understand you on a deeper level, sharing your heart and soul. Because that's that deep connection that is going to allow others to soak in what you're sharing, right? If they feel that it's coming from that authentic place, then they're able to hear it, absorb it and understand it. And hopefully it translates into action, into decisiveness, into some of the things we've talked about today, that it translates into some improvement for them. So, as one of the questions that I always ask, that I ask everyone on the show, there's those two questions, one at the beginning and one at the end, that without fail, I ask everyone, because they're super important for not just making the world a better place, but for understanding what it takes to be a hero, and that we can, every single one of us can be a hero on a daily basis. And that's what I alluded to earlier, is that spark moment. And we coined that phrase for our show early on in our first few episodes, of that defining moment that is where your actions have a ripple effect, where it's that one act, that one word, that one thing that you did for someone, or someone did for you, or some interaction that you had that literally has a ripple effect that changes your life, right? And you've already shared some, like with your daughter or with, that mentor. But, share with our audience a time where there was a spark moment where, you were impacted in some way, or you impacted someone else in some way that you didn't realize it until later on, but that ripple effect went far and wide.
Wow, there's been so many. I mean, truly so many moments that I could reference, because I always think of what you mentioned earlier, the call to adventure, the hero's journey, and that call to adventure is critical to stories. And as a storyteller, I've thought of several of those calls to action that I've had throughout my life. The one that's been most impactful for me, to be congruent with everything that we're talking about, this idea of taking extreme ownership. When I came back from that trip to Dubai that I talked about, I realized that I had started to blame a lot of the things that I had once prayed for the place that I was in mentally. I'm here in Estonia. All of a sudden, what was this crazy, amazing adventure with the woman of my dreams turned into an irritation and a frustration, and felt restricted and limited and locked down because of green card issues we were having. And I had all of this external nonsense that was all happening because I just started to blame things external to me. And when I got back from that trip and having seen 25 added pounds on my frame, which was never something I thought I would ever have to deal with, being embarrassed to take my shirt off by the pool, which as a former professional athlete, somebody who's always prided themselves on being in great shape, that was a wake-up call. But the decision that I had to make was to take full ownership for my happiness in my marriage, in the location we were, in my business. I had to go extreme and take ownership for everything I wasn't feeling and everything I was feeling. And when I did that, the first action step that I did was to decide to wake up earlier than I'd ever woken up before, and get to the gym and get into the best shape of my life, and finally do that. And without knowing it, that earlier wake up time gave me time and space without distractions of my business and my family and all those things to sort through how I landed in that place. And so what I took away from that decision was, moving forward, I'm taking extreme responsibility for my life, not in theory, not by saying it because Jocko Willink wrote a book about it or it's a buzzword, by waking up with enough time for me to handle my emotions. And by handle, I mean expressing and feeling as a man who wants to live a very ambitious, successful life, and accepting all the stress and responsibilities that comes with that, and not allowing any excuse to make me blame things that I once prayed for. And so the action step was to give myself the time and space in order to work through all of that. And so, if you're listening to this and you want to say, I like this idea of extreme ownership. Okay, cool. But that's the first step. Doing that in practice means finding time to sort through your emotions, having an outlet to express and feel. There's no better way to do that than to tax yourself in the gym and get under some heavy weight, pull some heavy weight. As a woman, same thing. There's no better way than to get rid of low-level emotions than to tax yourself physically. Just think of how present you are when you're trying to lift something heavy. All of that nonsense goes away. And so these are little things that you learn to do to take ownership in your life for the feelings and emotions that you're feeling or not feeling. And it's the greatest gift you can give yourself and those people, those little kiddos running through the house. For you, they're a little older now, so they're calling you asking for the PIN code for the credit card or whatever they're asking you for, man. Like, you know, it's the way we get to handle all of those things that we call blessings.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's been, you know, part of my life for many, many years. You know, I'm up, same thing, before 4 a.m. and in the gym. And you're right, that, you know, that focus you get, that clarity when you're, you know, lifting the weight and everything. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing that, you know, I wish and hope that only more people, that it was just a part of, I mean, it's such an important part of life for so many, but that it was just, you know, other than your little elementary school PE class, that it was more ingrained in the importance, you know, and the health that goes along with it, you know, for lifelong, you know, lifelong health and happiness. But so thank you for sharing that, because that's right up my alley. So
yeah, I saw that, you and your wife. I mean, I see you two training together. I mean, it seems like such a part of your lifestyle. It's something you can share with your partner. I mean, pass on to your kids. Our little daughter, before she goes to bed, she pulls out a towel and she does she's 3. She does like her version of yoga because she sees mom doing it. You know, they're watching us. They see what we do. They see how we live. And so, you know, I thought that was cool. When I ran across your profile, I really loved that you and your wife train together. My wife and I don't right now. And I'm like, dang, we could be doing this together. Like, there's so many benefits to a healthy, fit lifestyle. And, you know, so I recognize that with what you're doing as well, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it is important to us. And, you know, she coaches, she's a fitness instructor, but, you know, we get that little time where, you know, she's coaching a class, but then we can do some stuff together. You know, we can go through apps together, at least get, you know, a little bit together, which is nice. It is nice for the relationship. We've been together for, you know, almost 30 years. So married for 27. So it helps keep, you know, things healthy. So so thank you for pointing that out. So how can our audience learn more about you? Where's the best place to connect with you and learn more about your work and everything? So
Instagram is my jam right now. I was heavy on Facebook for a while, but I'm over on Instagram at Nick Connor. And I've also launched the Academy of Maximized Potential. It's a program specifically designed for men. So ladies, I apologize, but this is a boys club for sure. But we're building a strong brotherhood for men. And I've really backed it up by creating a free community on a platform off of Facebook, which is where most free communities are. And we're really pouring into the guys that jump into that group with free coaching, with free resources, and most important, introducing them to a circle of men on a similar path so that they have access to conversations, to accountability, to resources to develop mentally, physically, personally, professionally in a space that ordinarily they might not have access to. And so I'm really excited about that piece of what we're doing at the Academy. And if anybody wants to check that out, it's at the Academy of Max Potential, academyofmaxpotential.com.
Yeah, I've checked out the website. There's tons of great resources and information, and the website looks fantastic, by the way. So, you know, kudos there in building the website. I have to say, when you're there with the white, you have the white screen behind you and the cameras, you know, showing the kind of behind the scenes. I love the socks that, you know, you were
yeah, the socks. They're like, it's to do in Europe. You can't wear shoes anywhere in Europe in the house. I had to learn that, man.
Yeah. And then you're standing on top of the screen. So they're probably like, don't put your shoes on my screen anyway. You know, that's what I was thinking, but it makes more sense with the Europe thing. So, all right, well, definitely we'll put that in the show notes so people can check that out. And then, you know, just before we close here, Nick, one final question, because our goal at iSpark Change is to positively impact 1 billion people in the next 5 years through our community and our upcoming social impact social media platform. And we can't do it alone. We need the help of impactful, heroic leaders like yourself to help show others the way, like you're already doing, right? Because many people out there feel, as I once did, that you're too small to make a difference. So I value your thoughts as a leader, as a social impact hero. So I want you to peer into the future, peer into our iSpark Change crystal ball, and tell me, what can the world become if everyone starts believing that they are a hero and can impact our future every day?
think we are all aware of the gap between where we're at and where we would like to be, aware of the things that we need to do, that we ought to do, should do, could do. But so few people are willing to look foolish while they learn how to pursue those things. They're too concerned about what other people might think, and therefore they really cut themselves off of the feelings and the emotions that are positive just by taking a step toward that better version of themselves consistently. And we often get so concerned with impacting others that we forget that the best way to do that is to impact our own lives. And so ultimately, through your commitment to just taking that step, whatever that step is in your life, and doing it day after day, no matter how you feel, you will positively influence and impact others. Why? Because you're going to start to feel things for yourself. You're going to start to experience a level of self-confidence and unconditional belief in yourself that is undeniable to others. It will impact others. That is this idea of overflow. So commit to being the best version of you, and everyone that's in your aura, your sphere, will feel that energy, and you will make a positive impact.
Beautiful answer, and definitely some wise words there for our audience. So thank you for sharing that, Nick. Thank you also for taking the time to share your heart and wisdom with the audience. You came in, you over-delivered as I expected. Your desire to be impactful is evident, and you're filled with passion, humility, and you lead with a heart of fire and gratitude, which tells me you're going to continue to have success in all facets of life. So it's only the beginning of your social impact. Thank you very much, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
All right, Impact Heroes, it's our stories that connect us all, and we loved hearing Nick's today. Nick Connor, you're not only an inspiring and amazing human being, you truly are an iSpark Chain's social impact hero. We'll see y'all next time.
Remember, Impact Heroes, every positive action can be a spark moment that has a ripple effect that spreads far beyond the initial act. So go out there and spark change. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, then please smash that 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify and leave a review. We value your comments and we want to hear from you in the community. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next week on the iSpark Change podcast.